which is basically means an offering that's given with love and gratitude. So there's about 60,000 different foods, flowers and plants and root vegetables that we can actually consume. But 75% of our food just comes from 12 crops right now. That's it, right? And so when people ask me like, oh, this is a bean and all that, I try to tell them like, there's 500 different types of beans. There's 65 different lentils. And we only eat like just maybe like 4 or 5 of them that's commercially available. And what that also means is that there's a lot of like indigenous crops that are dying because they're getting forgotten. And all these crops are really hardy. So if you look at some of these, like some beans, they're used as cover crops. They're absolutely great, ways to like, conserve the soil, but also get nutrition to us. And here we are kind of like latching on, even as vegetarians, we kind of like latch on to like a vegan protein or soy or just a few things, but really your nutrition comes in a lot of different ways. And so we thought, let's try to work on these 3 beans, and I'll pass them around. Points to you guys if you know the beans. But these 3 beans have been like really like hailed in like even the Ayurvedic text, which is similar to like traditional ancient Chinese medicine. We have used these beans as like a go-to for anything and everything. If you want to get strong, you eat them. If you want to lose weight, you eat them. If you're recovering from childbirth, you eat them. Like literally, it is like the thing to go to. But they were always used as like a traditional curry, so it's very like hard, inaccessible, and we wanted to kind of make them fun. So we also started a brand called Svaa that makes bean crisps. So we'll also give you guys samples for that, but just a fun way to kind of introduce and talk about food diversity as whole. And today I'm going to be giving you guys a little demo on how to make these beans in a fun way. You don't have to know a recipe or anything. So if you guys want to take these around and show them, you want to show them?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so, yeah. So the first thing we always talk about and people come and tell me about is that, oh, beans, I don't like them, I don't know how to cook them, or they give me like gas. And you'll see like a lot of times like these trending like reels on how to make quick beans is always there. Let me tell you, beans is a labor of love and planning. If there is something called beans where you just kind of like pop open a dry bean, and put it in the thing, it is not going to be good for you and your body. You're not going to have a great time digesting it, especially if you suffer from like some kind of like gastrointestinal like issues, because bean in itself, it is a seed, right? And so the nature's way of preserving, and such a beautiful thing is that beans have a shelf life of eternity because they are dried beans, right? And that's how the nature conserves it. So the animals, the birds, they have figured out a way to consume it because they have certain enzymes that can digest it. But if we have to digest it, and if we are not like these rock hard people who can like pretty much consume glass, what we need to do is soak them. So we need to make them alive a bit. And that's basically, a lot of people do that, but a lot of people don't do that because they're like, oh, this lentil cooks really easy. Let me just pop it into and like steam it up. Great if you guys are in a pickle, but if you keep on eating beans like that, that's never a great idea. So we always recommend like, soak them for about 12 to 24 hours. And you'll see that the smaller the beans are, you actually need to soak them more. Because unlike black beans and pinto beans, these beans are smaller, which means that they have less carbohydrates or less starch in them. They have more protein and fiber in them. So you need to break it down to make it super accessible. And then when you soak them, they turn out into these amazing, gorgeous sprouts. And this fun way to eat these sprouts is like you can literally steam them. You could pop them into like some, an oven and just like, kind of like quickly heat them or toast them. We're always hearing about chickpeas, right? Like, and chickpeas is like the new craze. A lot of times people will think about like the bigger the beans you eat, you will have much more gases, right? Like there's like a lot of flatulence with the beans, right? Everyone's like, oh, beans make me fatty. But if you eat these smaller beans, right, they are also called as grams in India, or like, because these are, I would say the indigenous variety. So the more the bean gets grown commercially, it gets bigger and bigger in size, because you're trying to like really then work on like the yield of the farmers and the companies. But the smaller the beans are, they're actually much more packed with nutrition, and they are like super crunchy to eat. So you could just literally roast them. as well. And so if you guys want to check these beans and try and eating them, this is great way to just kind of like munch on. Raw food's always great, but this is a fun way of me doing it. So I wanted Kitab to eat these beans because I had some autoimmune disorders, and I realized like eating these beans were great for me and healthy for my digestion. Well, he didn't want to eat them all the time. He wanted to eat tacos and stuff, and I did not want to give him soy as an alternate protein. So I figured out like, why don't I cook these beans? So this is a bean that I've cooked, and simply I use pressure cooker a lot, or instant pot or a crock pot a lot, especially when I cook like these soaked beans, because then I can just forget about it and come back. But if you guys are like, like hands-on, you want to figure it out, just take a pot of boiling water, soak these beans in it for like 20 minutes. Don't have to worry about it. Drain it just like a pasta, and you have cooked beans ready. Like, you don't even have to worry about it. And they have pretty good texture too in them, again, because they are more laden with protein and fiber. So I took some cooked beans, and literally any kind of taco seasoning, any blend, any masala, curry blend, whatever you want, salt, some olive oil, just mix it. I don't know if I need to show it, but I will if you want. And I pop these into the oven with some chickpea flour, because then that kind of like gives that little like drying essence in it. Some seasoning to it. And if you want, I like it better if I just put my hand into it and just kind of like massage it a bit. And what that does is it kind of like coats it evenly, as well as the chickpea flour kind of like creates a little like crunching texture, yes, and binding. Especially if these beans get a little wet, you want to make sure that they soak it. And then just toss it in the oven. This is something that we've been doing it as a staple for us lately. Just pop it into the oven for about 300 degrees for about 40 minutes, 50 minutes. You can forget about it. And what you end up getting is this amazing bean crumble. So I am not a chef or seasoning expert. I'm a home chef. I read up. But I like to get in and out of the kitchen really quickly. And so this is a bean crumble that we came up with, which is great because it has this shelf life of almost like 30-40 days in a fridge. You could just keep it. I make it in batches and I keep it, and I literally use it on anything, like my salads, my grain bowls, my soups, tacos for him, whatever you call. These 3 beans, my little pet peeves. Yeah, my little pet peeves. So I soak them for I like to soak them for about 24 to 48 hours. They do not get any mold or anything. Like, I know people hear about like all that mold and stuff. There is no mold happening in these things. I take them out, keep them covered again. Then they start having these amazing like sprouts. And if you guys want to try eating some raw, please feel free to. I just put my hand in here, so I won't give you this one.
All 3 of those are mung beans?
No, so this one is a green mung bean.
Green mung?
Yeah, very common in Asian cuisine as well.
This is black gram.
This is black gram. It's also called Vigna mango or a black mung in some contexts. Very similar. And
this is the horse gram lentil.
This is a horse gram lentil. So unlike a red lentil, this has a little bitterish in taste. And the reason why these 3 are like really very like widely acclaimed in Ayurvedic recipes or medicinal recipes is because each of them has this amazing like exterior, like the shape and the color. The color of this green bean actually like talks about like prosperity as well and abundance in Ayurvedic texts, but it literally means that it gives you the abundance. It is like the most nutritious and bioavailable bean. If you cook it right, it is the best food to recover from, to get healthy from, and like a do it all. It's almost like a turmeric, or I don't know what the modern relevant of it is. Like, you literally can give it to a young kid and an older person, and they would be able to consume it well. You can eat it in any form and it's still like perfect.
He's agreeing with you.
Yeah, he loves it. He loves to eat the sprouts.
You're a little scared.
This is a black gram, and it is the reason it has like this black coating. If you guys have eaten like any South Asian foods like the rice cakes or crepes or idlis or dosas, we use them in that. It has a great protein structure, which is like, it is about 50% protein in its body, and then the rest of it is just fiber and carbs. So it's really heavy and intense. It has a great binding feature to it as well, which a lot of beans don't have it when you cook it. But then this is really great for strengthening, and especially in winters when you want some warm food, because it's laden with minerals like iron, magnesium, manganese, and phosphorus. And then this horse gram, one of the lentils that we have been eating a lot of in South Asia, again, very good for like your calcium, very good for phosphorus, very good for like those vital like nutrients that we don't really get a lot of, but really helpful in doing this. This has a bitter taste in it, which again is acclaimed because we're always trying to go towards a certain taste, right? Like, but our body has 5 organs. We need 5 tastes to make sure everything isn't similar. So bitter taste is being really acclaimed, and it's now coming into modern context and parlance that it is also an essential taste for our well-being. If you're always eating too much of salty food, you will crave salty food. So you need to always balance it with like sweet, sour, spice. But the bitter taste comes from certain foods that we need to eat so that it helps balance a lot of our endocrinal issues. And so this is like the lentil for it. And I suggest, like, if you guys are always like in a bind for like figuring out, how do I cook these beans or something, this is my go-to recipe. I try to chase different beans, especially like different cultural beans that I don't know, soak them, sprout them, and then if I don't know what to do, I cook them, boil them, and coat them with some chickpea flour. I like to be gluten-free most of the time, so chickpea flour is my thing, but if gluten flour is your thing, go for it. Spice it up, roast it up in the oven, make it nice and dry, and then use it. Use it for about 20-30 days. Use it as a part of your main course, just a crunch or whatever. But I think this is my take on eating the beans and talking more about it. There's samples outside for you guys. I also made a little soup because we want some soups in winter, and so these are the beans that I used again. So this is the same mung bean, but look at this and this. This one has a yellow texture to it, which is basically we just took the fiber out of it and it's split. So it's super easy to cook. You literally can just, and in these ones you don't have to soak them. You can just put them in like boiling water and they're ready. I cooked it with some tomato, cinnamon, and some black pepper. So super simple with some coconut cream on the top. And these are great because if you're using tomato soup in winter, just pop some mung bean in it and kind of like add that nutrition and that little heartiness in it. So it becomes like a perfect meal. So that's a little thing I wanted to talk. Do you guys have any questions? Yeah, I don't have much to tell. Yes, so this one has red lentil and yellow bean. Yeah, hi. So it is, so generally they say like, oh, raw food is great, and it is really good. But not everyone can get everything from raw food. So there's always like, I always like to have the path as the center, right? Where everything has its reason and purpose. So raw food is great if you can digest it. People like me, especially in winters, you're not supposed to eat raw food so much because our body doesn't get that digestion. So when you can digest it and if you eat it in small quantities, raw food is great. But then if you have sprouted food and then you cook it, your availability, your body has the ability to like really quickly take out the nutrients from it because you're making the digestion easier for your body. And so your body's like, oh, this is half digested food. This is great for me. I can consume it all. And so it doesn't give you that indigestion or that irritation that typically comes with a lot of beans when they're cooked wrong. So that's my take on it. Some of the fresh vitamins will go away, but it's okay. You get a lot more other things.
You had mentioned about soaking it in for 24 hours and then sprinkling it with the could you do that for all 3 beans?
I do that for all three beans together. Like I typically like to make it, so the mung beans you'll see is the mushier of the three. Cooks really fast. You can literally eat the mung bean like that, and it's like super easy. The reason why these three beans together are important, and you will see that a lot in like a lot of like journals and publications that talk about vegetarian food is not good enough. Well, it's not, because in some ways or the other, every bean is not a perfect protein. We need all 9 essential amino acids. So mung bean is really great, but it doesn't have lysine in it. Somebody is really great, like this horse gram is really amazing, but it doesn't have a lot of methionine. But all three together, when you have a combination of these three beans together, they're actually better than quinoa and chickpea nutritionally. They come really close. We did like some tests and analysis, and they come really close to being an egg, like so almost like as good as a nutritious like full protein. But we typically try to combine a couple of beans together so that when you're consuming it, and especially because I'm consuming this in a sprinkle format, I want to get it all together so I can have a little bit of everything and add to my nutritious value, protein value.
So I can imagine this in that way, if you want to make sort of like make your own cereal, like the black beans,
yes,
you can put some of that in it.
Absolutely. So if you cook it like this, yes, of course, yeah. So you could bind it as well, and it wouldn't give you, because it's cooked, it wouldn't give you a lot of like the chewiness that you would imagine in a hamburger. So if you want to add some kind of like a soy granules or something to kind of give you that bite, that's fine too. But you need some kind of a binding, like a sweet potato or something for it.
Okay, now getting back to keeping all three of them, are you getting a pretty high protein content?
Yes, so all three of them together, like at least what we tested in our bag, where it's like we wanted to come up with like a chip or a snack that was super nutritious, good for all. We're like, how do we get that in a small little quantity? We wanted to compete with like the protein snack powders, like the isolate powders, right? Where you kind of like take a vegan isolate, like a whey protein and stuff. Well, guess what? Our body doesn't like really recognize isolates. So when you take even a multivitamin by yourself, right? Because they're so like filtered out vitamins that the body's absorption is only about anywhere between 20 and 60%, not more than that. So the rest of it is just really expensive urine, right? So what happens is our body really understands it in a very bioavailable context, and so when you are basically cooking that together, or kind of like doing some part of it together. Some part of the digestion part of it together. So regardless of what your health condition is, because if you are like this really strong young person who has amazing digestive fire, because that's all it is about, right? Like how well you digest your food, you could consume it all. But because you've done some part of the cooking process, it's always going to be accessible for your body.
So in order to buy these, do you need to get them from a specialty store, like a Whole Foods store or any store?
So the mung beans are typically found in some stores right now, not as common, but the rest of them are definitely found in Indian grocery stores.
Okay, because the green is more popular.
Yes.
I've never seen the black.
Yeah. The horse gram. That's the thing
It's
that
the rarest one.
yeah, that's something we're trying to promote as well, is that because we don't eat enough of different foods, a lot of our indigenous crops are getting lost and forgotten. And so the idea is that how can we preserve the biodiversity? We don't necessarily have to cook the food in the same ethnic way that has been cooked. So we're trying to think of it like how can we use it and cook it in a modern context so that we keep those farmers growing those beans, which eventually ensures the diversity of the planet.
And it promotes crop diversity.
So I like the idea of this in there that you can even a snack, but also it seems like it could be multi-use in that not only in the hamburger, but also when you see it.
Yeah. Oh yeah, definitely, yeah. So we typically use them a lot in curries and stuff, but if you want to take them on the go, I thought this was a great way to kind of like have them and consume them.
So where can I find the tartar blanket?
The Georgia black beans are definitely found in the Indian grocery stores. And then we're kind of working with some of our regional farmers and trying to get these available as well online. Any other questions?
When you cook the batch in the bag, did you sprout them first?
Yes. Yeah.
And you can cook after you sprout?
Yes. So yeah, it's like that's the whole. So we always cook them after we sprout unless we are. So here's my rule of thumb, because I'll tell you this. I do not have a great digestive system. I do not have a great digestive fire. So for me, it's very hard to break down food, and so that it's easier for my body to digest. And everyone is different, like make and stuff. So if you can consume entire this as a raw food, for all that. But especially in winters when I'm super prone to dry, and there's this whole context in Ayurvedic medicine about when to eat what kind of food. They typically say that don't eat so much of sprouted and raw food all at one time. You can eat a little bit. So I would take like maybe a small little bowl of it. Definitely eat it with a lot of like lemon and pepper in it, so that breaks down a lot more. And then, so think of it like this is your protein, right? Like if it was like your fish, you would put like some lemon or something and like kind of break it down. So I would try to break it down a little bit, but then the rest of it, the rest half of it, I will cook it, so that my body now gets the other part of it, the cooked part of it, which is easy to digest. That's the idea.
So I just have one quick question. When you sprout them, you can also you cook them.
Yes.
For about 20 minutes.
Yes.
What about, is there so much water because you don't want everything to absorb in water, or will not water be utilized for something else?
Yeah, so that is fantastic. So when you are actually soaking them, right? Like when you're soaking any of the dry beans, the rule of thumb that we use a lot in our household, so just being like culturally passed out, is that whatever quantity you add about 4 times or 3 times the water in it. And then as it like soaks for 24 to 48 hours, you can see the water get like really like smelly, like it almost has like a lot of quick nutrients. But that's really great for plants because it gets acidic. The phytic acid comes out of it. So you pour and drain out all of that water. You don't want to consume that water because that's something that you've kind of like tried to make it easy. But then once you're ready to cook it, that cooked water you could consume. So in fact, what we do a lot of times is like we use mung beans when we are sprouting them, and then we use a lot of water in it, and we use that water itself to just kind of like drink as a broth. And it's just phenomenal because it has like this nice beany taste, but it's also loaded with nutrition.
So in other words, once it's cooked in water,
Yes.
you can use that broth.
Yes, absolutely. Uncooked, don't use it. Cooked, you can absolutely use it.
And when you mix them, how many times do you estimate?
I just- Yeah, I just do it once. Once is enough. I feel like it's like I think there's this whole thing about like scare about like oh you have to do it like this or that, or even with the sprouts like there's this whole fear about oh it can get moldy or this like that. I like honestly sprouts and beans are pretty hardy. Like the entire reason like they're so like eternally like consumable and shelf stable is because they have been pretty like immune or like resistant to a lot of these like mold and fungi. Like if you store a batch of dried black beans, that's like your disaster preparedness, right? Right there. Like it will never go bad. Like it will literally never go bad. You can like literally do that. But then and so that's the same thing, like once you soak them in water, it's very hard for them to catch mold or anything. There's very little sugar in it, unlike fermented foods and stuff, so for it to get moldy. So you should be fine. Like I've sprouted them for like these now for like about 4 days and they're perfectly awesome.
I have one question on the water. The water in San Francisco is nice and soft.
Yeah.
But the water in San Jose is very harsh. So would you suggest that we use the water that we buy in the bottle as opposed to using the tap water as a
Yeah. I'm not sure about that, honestly. I don't think I'm like the best person to answer it. I live in the East Bay too, Union City. And food, like water will be a little different everywhere. The best thing I try to do it is like when I'm cooking with it, I add a little bit of rock salt in it. Because if I end up eating just the beans by itself, they're like nice and salty. And then for us, like it's like when in doubt, add turmeric. So we always add turmeric. It's like, okay, you know what? I'll be fine. I'll survive. If I add turmeric, then it'll be good. So I typically do that, and I'm like, okay, say a prayer, everything's gonna be good. But especially with beans, again, you know, I feel like they're just such like versatile and absolutely misunderstood. And we put them in a box, and I want to tell everyone to eat them. Any other questions? Thank you so much for coming. I hope you guys come and check out the vendor and check some samples. And if you guys want to try some, there's a whole bunch of prepared for you guys as well. I've kept them ready. Thank you.